The city of David. This particular story is what I call a bracket story. If you can imagine a bracket from which you hang things like curtains or certain items, this is a story that is an overview of David's life. There are many, many stories about David. This gives you an overview of his life, and I have chosen to hang certain stories from it to point out what I feel is some of the most important parts of his life. First of all, the part about him making Jerusalem the capital of Israel. Then you have the part where he brings the Ark of God to his new capital city. Then I have the story about him wanting to build the temple of God and making preparations for that. And finally, and most important, the story about God giving David an agreement, a covenant, a promise. That's the most important part of the whole thing. Now, once you have these stories right here, the bracket is in place, and you may read some other stories about David, and you may want to put those on where they fit in this particular sequence, and that would be fine. Now, learning this story is fairly easy until you come to the part about the covenant, the agreement between God and David. That's the most difficult part. So I want to spend most of my time there because I need to give you a detailed storyboard so you can put that in your mind. And once you have that, the rest of the story I think you'll find to be fairly easy. You simply listen to it a few times and you should have it. Still, after we deal with the promise, we'll go back and give you a simple storyboard in case you want to use it. Okay, let's get right into the promise, the covenant. I'm going to have you watch me give you the storyboard. You don't have to do it right at the beginning. Kind of watch the whole thing. Then I'm going to have you join me with your hands up and going through the whole thing. Then we'll go back and do the entire story. The covenant goes like this. You were following sheep when I made you king of Israel. And I have been with you, and I have given you victory over your enemies. Now I will make your name great among all the men who have ever lived. There will be no end to your kingdom. But you will not build my temple because you are a man of war. Your son will be a man of peace, and I will be a father to him. And I will establish his kingdom forever. Okay, join me and let's just go through that part right there. Get your hands up, and first of all, you're going to follow. You were following sheep, so you have one hand following the other. Now, the key to storyboards is to have one hand motion that flows into the next. So instead of saying you were following sheep when I made you king of Israel, I'm going to have like my hands going out to get the crown and then bring it up. So you were following sheep, king of Israel. Now your hands come down like your crown and just goes right down over your face and down to your heart when you say, I was with you and I gave you victory over your enemies. Okay? You were following sheep when I made you king over Israel. And I have been with you and have given you victory over your enemies. Now your hands are right here, so you just go up. Your name will be great, will be listed among all the great men. There will be no end to your kingdom. Now this other hand, this hand's going out, so this one just comes up, but you will not build my temple. Then pretend you're having a knife here, because you are a man of war. Many people have died. Your son, like a person as a child, your son will be a man of peace. And I will be a father to him. This is the hand gesture for father. I will be a father to him. And then you bring it out. and his kingdom will be forever. I will establish his kingdom forever. Follow with me now, and let's go to that part. Do it with me. You were following sheep when I made you king over Israel. I've been with you. I've given you victory over all your enemies. Now your name will be great. No end to your kingdom. You will not build my temple because you are a man of war. Your son will be a man of peace, and I will be a father to him. I will establish his kingdom forever. Okay. What I recommend is you practice just that. You might want to stop this film right here and go through and practice that a few times, or back it up and watch that again. And then come back and we'll go through the rest of it. The rest of the story is really quite simple. Let's go back now and start where the story begins. It starts off with David had victory over his enemies, and you kind of hold your biceps right here. He had victory over his enemies. So he made Jerusalem. Now this is like a housetop several times. So he made Jerusalem his capital. And he brought the ark of God. I am pulling it in. But you notice my thumb is down because he did it the wrong way. He brought the ark of God, tried to bring it to Jerusalem the wrong way. Someone touched it, and they were killed. So let's just go back. David had victory over his enemies. He decided to make Jerusalem his capital. He brought the ark of God to Jerusalem. Someone touched it. They were killed. David didn't know why. So for 3 months, you just go out. For 3 months, he put the tabernacle at a home nearby. And then God blessed that home. This is the sign for blessing. Like this is a person's head, and you're going to bless it by putting your hand on their head. And God blessed that home so that David brought the tabernacle, and this time the thumb is up. He brought the tabernacle to Jerusalem, and the people praised God, and he put it in a tent. Now he goes on, but let's just go back and just go back a little ways. He brought the tabernacle, someone touched it, they were killed. So for 3 months, he put the tabernacle in a house. And God blessed that household. Then David brought the tabernacle into Jerusalem. People rejoiced, and he put it in a tent. Now, at this point, you have this hand comes up. God gave David victory over his enemies. You have your hands on your bicep. He gave victory over his enemies. So there was peace. This is kind of my sign for peace. You just kind of put your head down, and there was peace in Israel. At that point, David said, I live in a beautiful palace, while the ark of God is in a tent. At this point, you kind of nod your head because the prophet said, you may build the tabernacle. Let's just back up. David didn't know why. Someone was killed. So for 3 months, he put the tabernacle in a home. God blessed that home. So he brought the tabernacle. The people rejoiced. He put it in a tent. God gave David victory over his enemies. And he had a time of peace. He says, I live in a palace, while the ark of God is in a tent. You may build the temple. And the prophet, here's a message from God for David, which says, You were following sheep when I made you king over Israel. And I have been with you. I've given you victory over your enemies. Now your name will be listed among all the great men who have ever lived. No end to your kingdom. But you will not build my temple because you are a man of war. Many people have died. Your son will be a man of peace. And I will be a father to him. I will establish his kingdom forever. Then you can just come back, and David was content. Okay, let's go through the whole thing from start to finish. I'm going to follow you. You lead me. I will go slow, and hopefully you will go ahead of me, and that way you can kind of check it out to see if you're getting it right. And how does it start? David had victory over his enemies. He made Jerusalem his capital. He brought the ark of God the wrong way. Someone touched it, and they were killed. David didn't know why. 3 months it was in a house. God blessed that household so that David brought the ark of God. People rejoiced, and he put it in a tent. David had victory over his enemies. It was a time of peace. He said, I live in a beautiful palace, while the ark is in a tent. You may build the temple. The prophet heard a message for David. You were following sheep when I made you king over Israel. I have been with you. I've given you victory over your enemies. Now your name will be among all the great men who have ever lived. There'll be no end to your kingdom. But you will not build my temple because you have been a man of war. Your son will be a man of peace. And I will be a father to him. I will establish his kingdom forever. And David was content. Well, go through this. It's a wonderful story. It's such an important story. It's a bracket story. It's an overview. Read some other stories about David. Choose one and put it on the bracket there and add it to your story. It's a wonderful story. The Lord bless you as you learn more about the life of David and how it fits into the overall story of God.